All of last year, I was talking about 2020 and that we were being prepared for the thing that was coming down. In January, I channeled in the 2020 energy forecast that we would experience a global health crisis.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Hello everyone, thank you for being here for another episode of Things You Can't Unhear. Now I want to take this opportunity before we jump into this incredible interview that I've got lined up for you today to let you know that we've been entered into the Australian Podcast Awards for the Best Wellbeing Podcast in Australia. And I just wanted to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for listening to episode after episode, for sharing your comments and your thoughts and your insights and all of the feelings that you have felt after listening to the interviews that we've conducted on Things You Can't Unhear. And I know for myself personally, it's been such a wonderful journey across these last 67 episodes to have these change makers and thought leaders involved in these deep conversations, sharing their intense journeys and learnings with us in such a profound way. Speaking to these people has definitely shifted me on so many levels, and I'm beyond grateful that you've been along for the ride with me. Now, I would also love to take this opportunity, if you feel called to leave a review on the iTunes platform. Let us know what you think of the podcast. If it's something that you've really enjoyed over the last 67 episodes, please let us know. This is the way that others can also find the podcast and listen to the inspiring stories that are shared on it. So again, thank you for being on this journey with me, being here to continually listen to the new interviews that are shared, and for making it such an enjoyable experience. Season 3 of the Things You Can't Unhear podcast will be launching soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. So as a final episode of Season 2 of this podcast, we are going out with such an incredible chat to intuitive psychic medium Natalie Miles. Now, Natalie Miles is an international psychic medium, as well as a writer, a speaker, and the host of the top spiritual podcast, So You Think You're Intuitive. It's Natalie's mission to make intuition accessible to everyone. And she works with people to use their intuition to look at what's holding them back in the here and now and empower them to take action on their inner truths. What we're going to hear in this episode is what the difference is, if any, between a psychic and an intuitive, how to manage the fear around using our intuitive powers, the shame associated in connecting with our psychic powers, and how we can work our intuition into our everyday lives and use them as our gifts. She's also going to teach us how to differentiate between a normal thought and an intuitive thought. So join me in welcoming Natalie Miles to the show. Hello, Natalie. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, hello. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
Now, I want to jump in to so many things today because intuition is something that I'm really interested in learning more about and tapping into on a personal level, but for our listeners as well. And I want to sort of share your journey, your story, and maybe give everyone some guidance and tips and advice on how we can bring it into our everyday lives. But I do want to start by asking this simple question. Is a psychic and an intuitive the same thing, in your opinion?
I love this question. Yeah, it's the same thing. I think it's the shame that we hold of around the world, around the word and around the label psychic is massive. And we're all intuitive. We're all born intuitive. We all have intuitive gifts. And the label psychic has become full of shame, full of stigma, and also very, I think psychic is a word that's become very future based. Like you go to a psychic for them to tell you your future,
Mm.
versus us also, as intuitives, yes, being able to tap into our intuition so that we can get those future insights, but hey, more importantly, using our intuitive gifts to give us guidance in the now and to heal the now and work with it in the now in our everyday life. So yeah, so much stigma around the word psychic, but it's the same thing.
You are so right. When many of my friends and family have readings from psychics, they always say, "Oh, she was great," or "He was great," but they didn't really tell me anything about the future and what's going to happen. And I really love that that's not the importance here. That's not what we're there for. It's about tapping into what's here and what's now, because that's the only moment that exists, right?
Yeah, and the future is created in the now. Like the future of your life is created in the now moment. And when we shift that perspective and we work with, our own intuition and asking our own inner guidance and not going to see a psychic, but actually tuning into the now and asking, like, what do I need to know today? What blocks are holding me back? Who can I call in to support me on my journey? And also, feeding into all the messages and signs and guidance that appear, from your spirit team every day. Yeah, it's a powerful tool for the now. And there are psychics who can give really detailed future based advice, myself included. The future stuff does come up in sessions, but spirit are really clear, like that's not the main purpose of us connecting.
Signs and guidance, you mentioned. And I love it because when you really allow yourself to look for signs, they're absolutely everywhere, aren't they? They are just, even a couple of days ago, I asked for a sign for two green birds to tell me that I was on the right pathway in some choices that I was making. As soon, and I'm feeling really intuitive at the moment, the last couple of weeks, I'm really tapping into it. I literally walked outside my back garden, into my back garden, and two green birds were sitting in the tree in front of me. And
Ah,
there's no denying that that is something. I didn't
no.
make that up. They were there. I saw them. I even took a photo, and I felt so seen and heard and protected and guided.
Yeah, and it can be as simple as seeing two birds. And also the fact that you called them in, like you asked for the sign. A lot of the time, we sometimes expect that the intuitive guidance is just going to appear and we're going to know it. But when we change the dynamic and we interact with it, we interact with the energy, we ask for the signs. It's a really powerful thing. But I do get a lot of people who then get too hooked into the energy of seeing signs, or ask to see signs all the time and then also get really disappointed when they don't see them and then think that they're failing in some way. So I think it's an important balance of calling in the signs, and also not living your life by always having to see a sign to make a decision, and using other intuitive skills, like your whole energetic intuitive body is part of your gift. Like your whole body is intuitive, so then not just relying on the sign, but also like, how does my body feel? Does this feel like a hell yes or a hell no? And really trusting that too. But signs are amazing.
I really want to jump into those feelings soon. But firstly, I'd love to know how this became your life on a professional level. And has this been a part of you since you were welcomed into this world as Natalie
Oh,
Miles?
yeah. Hey, it's been a journey. I'll be really transparent. Even if you'd have asked me, how long have I been in Canada? Yeah, 6.5 years ago. If you'd have told me 6.5 years ago that this would be my full-time job and my life right now, I would have probably laughed at you and said, no way. I've always been intuitive. I grew up, hey, we're all born intuitive, but I first started developing my gifts when I was about 16. My mum was going to psychic circles. She was going to psychic development circles in the UK. And she said one day, hey, Nat, do you want to come? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Like nervous, really nervous. I'm wondering what I was going to, what to expect. Would I receive anything? And yeah, loved it. Had such an amazing experience, and really felt like I was coming home to myself and kind of surprised myself. But through, well, shame, fear, worry of what other people thought of me, what friends would think of me, what other family members would think of me, kind of really shut it down during my 20s. And then through a series of life changes of um, getting the intuitive hit to leave London, move to Canada with 2 suitcases, and just be like, okay, I don't know why I'm coming here, but I know it's for a reason. And then I used to work in film. I used to be a producer, and my guides are just like, you're not supposed to be doing this work. What are you doing? And yeah, quit through another series of events, quit working in film and started doing this full time about, yeah, just over 4 years ago.
So how do you even start doing this full time? Oh, you got to Vancouver, you felt drawn there, and
Hmm.
then what were the next steps?
Yeah,
What was laid out for you?
great question. I actually went to a psychic. I went to a psychic and they said, you should be developing your psychic skills again. They're really important. You need to go and be developing your skills. And I asked that psychic, well, where do you think I should go? And they recommended another psychic. And so I went to this woman. I had a reading with her just to see, like, hey, do I want to, do that? And ended up doing some psychic development classes again. And she said to me, you do know you're going to be doing this full time, right? And I was like, no, don't be silly. Like, even then, just so in denial. Um, and then, I was still working in film. Like, I was still lying to my colleagues of what I was doing after work and telling them that I was going to do meditation circles, because I thought by me saying meditation circles, it wouldn't be too controversial, or I didn't want them to think I was weird. Again, that fear of the word psychic. And then it came really obvious, and I always just say that, like, spirit will give you life boulders. If you're not listening, they will throw mini pebbles at you, and the pebbles get turned into larger size rocks and then come in the life boulders. And I was ignoring that. I was really unhappy working in film until one day I got let go from my film job. My boss turned around and basically said, you're not happy. It is really obvious that you're not happy. You need to go and discover what makes you happy. um I was upset, I was angry, I was frustrated. I was like, why is this happening to me? And I giggle because 3 months before, I'd already started creating the branding for my first website to do with intuition and doing psychic readings for people. And my guides were like, well, you've already started creating it. You just got to go and do it. So yeah, that's when it all started. And I literally just started doing readings in my studio apartment, which was tiny, next to my bed, on my kitchen table. I wasn't even offering online sessions to start with, and that's where it all began. And it's been such a journey to where I am now.
Oh, I absolutely love that you followed that guidance. I really want to touch on something you said, and it resonated with me a lot. But the shame, I really want to dig into the shame and why you think there is so much stigma around us, using our psychic
Gift.
practices.
It's funny. I use the word gift. Some people are like, "Oh, I don't see this as a gift. I see this as a hindrance because it's just too much." But that's a side topic. Yeah. Oh, I in the book I talk about so many different. We don't realize all the blocks that we have to connecting to our intuition. So we have ancestral shame, from the patriarchy, from colonialism, from the witch trials, that we carry on, that we hold in our DNA, that we hold in our lineage, that we carry from the fear of connecting to a greater, higher power source than those who were in political power or social power. They didn't want people to connect to their gifts. They didn't want them to be feeling powerful. So our intuition was shamed. It was made to be like the devil's work. And that is something that we really hold on to start with, that we're clearing. I know a lot of people have no religion. People think that religion is a block to connecting to your intuition, just upbringing, how you're raised, and a lot of people also thinking that they need to choose between following their intuition and working with spirit and choosing God. Like, and I'm always say, like, you can be religious and connect to your intuition. Like, we don't need to choose between that. And I think that's again part of that, like, societal conditioning and programming, that we're really breaking down on so many levels, where we've been conditioned through with our ancestors for generations and generations, and we're in this time where we're like, nah, I'm not doing that anymore. So those are those are some really big kind of ancestral lineage blocks. And hey, then there's things like people pleasing is a block to our intuition. I mean, how many times have you like got that intuitive hit, known something to be true for yourself, and then you don't act on the intuition because you don't want to upset someone, or you want to people please someone, or you don't want to go against the grain. Like, it shows up in our society regularly, of where we step out of our power and we step out of our truth, and we don't listen to our intuition.
Mm. Oh, so very, very true. And you end up living a life that doesn't align to any of what you are about. And then those boulders come in that you were talking about. And there is that wake up call that happens to so many of us. Now, I'd love for you to really, we touched on it earlier just briefly, but describe the feeling of an intuitive thought versus a traditional thought, just so we can learn what that difference might be and start to tap into that ourselves.
Yeah. It's all very unique to us. I always say that it's not one size fits all. It's not one gift fits all. We all have a unique energy of how we connect to our intuition. So it's about, going with the guidelines that myself or other teachers are giving you, and then giving yourself the opportunity to go on that intuitive journey to discover like how you want to work with it and how that feels for you. For me personally, I describe it like we have the ego fear-based voice, and it's like you have the ego fear-based voice and you have the intuitive voice, and it's like you're working out which is which, like what do I listen to, and how do I distinguish between the ego fear-based voice and my intuitive voice. So for me, the ego voice, it comes in and it's like frontal lobe, like frontal chatter, like it's always at the front of the head, and it's like asking you, like you can't stop thinking about it, like you've got a problem or a thought or something you think you should be doing, and it goes round and round and round in your head. It's also 9 times out of 10 it's got like a time agenda. I need to know this now, like give me the answer now. And it's always looking for a solution, like it has an agenda and an expectation, and it can come with like fear or anxiety. It can make you feel tight in the body, and it can sometimes feel like the ego voice has like that. I like to describe it as like a sergeant general, like barking orders at you of, you've got to fix this. But the intuitive voice has a completely different tone, has a completely different quality when it comes into your body. One of the main ways to distinguish your intuitive message is it will come in and it will disappear. You will not overthink the intuitive message. It literally comes in as that voice of reason, that message that kind of feels deeper in your body. It comes from like the back of your head, and it will have a different resonance to it, a different quality to it, that will feel guiding and supportive. And it will come in and disappear. And it will also feel like it isn't trying to fix something necessarily, and it will also not be stuck on a time. And a lot of the time it's not logical, and that's the problem, is we get stuck between the logical ego fear-based mind and the intuitive voice that sometimes doesn't seem very logical but feels like really good in the body, like a tingle or a warmth feeling. And it's learning how we distinguish between the two.
I love that. And I've had many of those moments, and they generally come up when I'm in the shower. I have like a really inspired thought that I was like, I've never ever thought of that before. Where did that come from? That is bloody brilliant. And the fleetingness that you mentioned, it's almost like you have to quickly go and write it down. Otherwise it's gone and you'll forget it, or it will sort of something will come through, or the noise will just distract you from following that intuitive guidance that you've received. So I really, really connect with what you said there. But there's something that I really want to talk about too, because you said it felt like a great feeling, but then there's some intuitive thoughts that can be quite negative. And I just recently had on the last episode of my podcast someone called Sarah Riegelhuth, and she always has these feelings that someone in her life is going to pass. And she had a lot of death in her life over a period of time. And prior to that all happening, she would get these feelings. And it actually turned into something that she completely blocked out because it gave her a lot of anxiety. And she didn't know how to differentiate between a feeling of intuition or whether this was just a feeling of anxiety that someone else in her life was going to pass. So, having heard that, what are your thoughts around sort of the more negative intuitive feelings that we get, and how to make sure that they're not anxiety, and give ourselves protection around them?
Yeah, great question. The more negative ones, it's also about trusting that you're receiving the negative ones for a reason. Like it's part of the non-spiritual bypassing of not just expecting your intuition to bring in, oh, it's going to be all love and light and amazing. Like it's not. Like when you're connecting to your intuition and you're getting the hard hitting messages of things that might come up in your life or the collective or your community, that can be a lot to hold and carry as an intuitive, energetically, but also knowing that you wouldn't be receiving the message if spirit didn't think that you were capable of holding it energetically as well. And again, it's that like really believing in your own truth and power around the knowledge that you're receiving. But it is really important to, it's something that I call energetic self-sovereignty. It is really important to clear your energy, create the tools and practices to shield yourself, to ground yourself. And also when the anxiety is fascinating, this question keeps coming up, like with anxiety and intuition. Is anxiety a warning, or is it just anxiety? So
Exactly.
there is so the questions for me, if something's coming up and I'm anxious, I will take note of what I have been viewing on the news, what I've read on social media, what conversations I've just had with people, and noticing whether am I actually getting a warning that's coming through my body as anxiety, or have I just consumed the energy of content through a conversation or someone that I've just interacted with, or a piece of content energetically. Is that part of the message, or am I just taking that on as fear and anxiety? And so we're starting to really realize that we need to get really clear using our intuition, of really tapping into our energetic body and deciphering and decoding around what the energy that we're consuming from so many things, and so many different news stories and chaos and change that is happening in our world. And yeah, it can really kind of manifest in the body. I love when I'm feeling really anxious, I like to name it. I actually name it to the universe, and I'm like, what am I anxious about? Okay, what am I anxious about? And I will go and write down or say it out loud of what I'm anxious about, and 9 times out of 10 it leaves my body. And when the anxiety is across my chest, I'm a big tapper now. I love tapping it out because it just gets rid of the anxiety.
That's where it sits for me too, right in my chest. And I can feel it now. There's little things that are popping into my mind around. I'm someone who's dealt with anxiety for many years, since my teenage years. And I've also pushed away my intuitive gifts after an experience I had in my 20s, where I spoke about this in the last episode of the podcast as well. But I got messages from someone who had passed, and it completely freaked me out, and I shut everything off.
Yeah.
And I am only now starting to want to tap into it again. And I know that you've got some mantras that you use, and I actually wrote one of them down, and I thought, I don't even know if I can read it out, because it was about releasing that fear and opening yourself up to allow whatever it is to come in. And I still don't know if I'm ready to read that mantra out and say it out loud, because
Oh,
there's so much fear there still. And once you turn it on, can you turn it off?
it's a great question. Um, I share a practice in a chapter called Energetic Self-Sovereignty, all about how we're in charge. Like, and that's the thing, when we've had those scary moments, or we've had those instances where it's come in and it's like, whoa, 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 this wasn't what I expected. Like, I'm not down for this, spirit. Like, I'm not here to be, on your beck and call. I use an exercise called the energy tap, where you actually imagine like a tap or a faucet above your head, and when you want to connect, you imagine the energy tap turning on. You imagine your intuitive energy flowing through like a golden fountain that flows all the way over your body, which opens up your intuition. And then when you're done and you're finished and you want to be turned off for the day, you imagine the energy literally turning off, and you imagine all the energy going back into the tap and then it being turned off at the top.
Mm.
And also grounding and anchoring. A lot of the time when we kind of connect, it's important that we use the energy of Mother Earth and Mother Nature to really ground our energy. And so I'm always, before connecting, imagining the roots of a tree going down into the center of the earth to really ground my energy. And I call in my spirit team for shielding. Like, I use a lot of shielding tools and practices, so I feel safe, so I feel that I'm in control, and remembering that I am in my own power, and that, so I don't feel like I'm at service to it, versus and feeling like I'm not in charge.
That's really good to know. When you do readings with other people, do you take on a lot of that energy from their readings, and do you feel depleted and drained after, or elevated perhaps after sharing your guided intuitive thoughts with them?
Yeah, great question. I think when you're starting to learn to connect to your intuition, it's exhausting. Like,
Mm.
it can really knock energy out of you. Like, you can be really tired, especially when you're first learning to share messages with others. Depending on the client, like, I now see very few clients a week. So for me, it's uplifting. For me, it's inspiring. For me, it's kind of creating change. But is there heavy conversations? Yes. Is there difficult energy being discussed? And yes. Am I, to give the readings to them, am I connecting to their energy? Yes. But I'm also very clear that I am not taking on the energy of that person. I create very clear energetic boundaries around that. Do I do all my own energy clearings? Yeah, after a day of client sessions, I'm in that salt bath. Like, I'm in that salt bath. I do clearings between each person. And I also go and see my own energy healers to, there's only sometimes we can only remove as much energy as we can from ourselves. And we actually need to get the support of other people, as healers, to
Mm.
go, working with other healers to really reset our energy as well.
How do your messages come through when you're doing readings for others?
I have all gifts: hearing, seeing, feeling, knowing. And for me, it's now just like I'm talking. It's literally, it's Nat talking. It's a blend of everything all at once. That is, it's just like I'm hearing it's like just hearing the thoughts in your head, and I'm just talking.
That is amazing. Is this a natural born gift? Do you think? Some of us have more of a gift than others?
Yeah, it's like some of us are really good sports people, or some of us are really good musicians. We can all learn to play the piano. We can all, learn to, take up a certain sport. Of course, it's like with everything, there's someone's always going to have, greater skills than not. But I still, I know to be true that we are all intuitive, and are all psychic, and can connect to that energy.
My eldest daughter has definitely got a gift, and she's heard and seen some things that have frightened her and completely blocked it off. And we had a conversation yesterday because I had your podcast playing in the background, and she was asking me quite a few questions about it, which I found very interesting. And I said to her, "Do you think that you're intuitive?" And she's like, "I'm too scared of that stuff. Once I saw someone in my room and it completely freaked me out, and they were trying to tell me something, and I just never want to see it again." And she's blocked it, and she's 11. Yeah.
I feel you. As a kid, like I used to come through in my dreams as well, and scary dreams and things like that. And I also think with the TV shows that we watch and the movies and the films that we watch, the horror films, it also gives it all a really bad rep. Like that is a block. It creates that fear that something bad is going to happen or a negative energy is going to appear. When I go to bed, I call in my shielding. Right now, because the collective is pretty intense, I have a bowl of salt under my bed, and which is awesome. It really helps to kind of clear and protect the energy. But yeah, for anyone listening that's like, I'm scared of what I see in my sleep, or if you feel that confidence, ask them, what are you trying to tell me? Most of the time they're just trying to share a message with you in some way, or they're a loved one that's trying to get hold of you. And sometimes it's like, okay, I'm ready to receive this. And if you're not, you just actually say out loud or in your head, I'm not ready right now. And if there is a spirit that is malevolent, or you think that is trying to get you, that's really you don't want to connect to, I swear at them. Like, seriously, like I will just tell them to F off and be like, I'm not doing this. And I kind of get a bit angry, and that works as well.
I got that advice when I was younger as well, just to verbally say out loud, "I'm feeling afraid. I am not ready for this. Please go away." And you
Yeah.
instantly feel better after you say that. So at least, at least we've got that. At least there is that tap to turn on and turn off and have that control around it, because I think that's what is blocking a lot of us from tapping in.
It's like, I agree. And I was just like, I feel like we don't have the practical skills like enough. So it's like, that's why learning the really simple practical skills will then allow us to be back into our intuitive power, and not to fear it, but to really kind of embrace it.
Well, I know everyone out there is probably listening and going, how can I bring this into my everyday life? And what tools do I need to do so? So I would love you to share something with everyone listening today. Maybe the first steps of how we can start to tap into this a little more on a personal level.
Yeah, that's really a great question. It's fascinating because with everything COVID and pandemic and lockdown, it's been really fascinating that in this slowdown, people are really connecting to their intuition on a whole new level. And so part of connecting to your intuition is creating the space, pausing, noticing, and using your imagination and noticing the themes and the patterns that are occurring in your life around you. That is an intuitive message. And so just noticing what is coming up for you, like how you noticed the two green birds. Yes, you asked for them, but you were going at a slow enough pace and listening to be able to see them. So we've gone from this world where we're rushing around, we're always on the go, but now we're in this real true space of noticing. And when we start to notice the themes and patterns, it can be really powerful to witness. So for example, when I was writing the book, ironically, around the chapter all about noticing and how to connect to your intuition in that way, I kept seeing spiders. Spiders were coming up for me everywhere. They were coming up to music. I was hearing the word spiders in music. I kept reading about them. People kept mentioning them to me. I had clients that were telling me stories about spiders, and even an Uber driver who turned out, after a conversation with him, turned out that He was a storyteller, and he proceeded to tell me an ancient story about a spider. And I laughed. I sat in the back of the car and I was like, okay, spirit, I get the message. I'm supposed to look at what spiders mean for me right now in my life. So I went away and I asked myself, like, what do spiders mean for me? Because a lot of the time we don't understand what the messages we're getting. We don't know how to decode them. It's like, great, I'm seeing spiders, but what on earth does that mean? So you just pause and you ask yourself, what does a spider mean for me? And so I did. I went on that journey, and I noticed the spiders. I tapped into my imagination, and so I began to ask the questions, and I realized that the spider was all about being held. It was about being in the web and feeling safe and supported. And it was also around my creativity. Like, I was writing the book, and I needed to, be like the female spider, creating the web of the creativity that wanted to flow through. And when I got that as a message, and I understood that I needed to trust the process and to be held by the community, and that I was being held by writing the book, it made me at peace. So I encourage anyone that wants to start really tuning into their intuition, to really start noticing the themes and patterns that are showing up, like even from the conversations that you're having with people, to like overhearing words in certain conversations, things that are appearing on the radio, the themes of films and the TV shows that you're watching. It's not a coincidence.
It's amazing when you really quiet your mind and just look out for it. So is there a particular meditation that you can do to quiet your mind, to bring the intuition in and to bring those messages in? Or is it just silencing and stilling yourself in one way or another?
I really feel like it's kind of more traditional New Age thinking, that it's only done via meditation, and you need to be quiet. Like, I really feel, moving your body is awesome. I get the best messages after I've done like an embodiment movement practice, or I've gone for a walk in nature, or I've shifted the energy in a different way. I think it works differently for everyone. Whether you are someone that is naturally drawn to a guided meditation. But if you're someone that is like, oh my God, guided meditation isn't for me, how can I do it? Honestly, I always use the example of the shower. Get in the shower in the morning and say to your guide, say to your spirit team, what do I need to know today? What do I need to know today? It is amazing what insight comes through. And the other thing you can do if it is a guided meditation is like, call your spirit team forward, call your guides forward, and say, I want to feel you. I want to feel you, and like bring them in close and invite them into your energetic field, and just notice any feelings or sensations that come through in your body.
What works for me quite well is journaling, to be honest. And I've found that when I put pen to paper, sometimes thoughts come out that I have never even thought of in my day-to-day life. And I'm like, where did that even come from? And I'll go back and read things that I've written early in the morning, straight out of bed, and I'll be like, I have no idea where those words originated from, because they don't sound like something that I would have written. And it amazes me. Sometimes I've written beautiful poems. I'm no poet.
Yeah, you're channeling them through. And I love that. I love channeled writing practices where you literally kind of get yourself out of your head and you literally just start writing and see what wants to come through. And sometimes the first couple of sentences might sound like you, but you kind of get into the flow of what wants to kind of channel through. And if you want to like ask a specific question or something that's going on in your life that you want guidance on, yeah, write the question at the top of the piece of paper and then start writing. It's such a powerful way to connect.
There's the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, who's one of my favorite spiritual thought leaders. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't read it. I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But he's written 4 books, and how they all started was him writing a letter to God in frustration of why his life had turned out so horribly, and what was this life experience all about anyway. And he just got message after message after message and wrote these amazing 4 books that, honestly, if you read them, this stuff cannot be made up. And I'd love to send you a copy. I've actually sent so many copies to so many people because it's so fascinating. But that's just when I've interviewed him twice on this podcast, and he lives through these intuitive guided thoughts and has sold millions and millions of books. And he still says to the day, these are not my words.
Mm-hmm.
These are spirit's words, God's words, whatever you want to call it. These words were gifts for me to share and spread around the global collective. And the years that he's been doing this for 20 something years, he still says they're not his words.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Yeah, it's amazing. I do like a channeled energy forecast for the month on my podcast, where I like say like this is the energy theme for the month ahead. And it is that, like, I sit and I write, I write it down on what wants to come through, and you get out of your own way and you're like, oh, this is what wants to come through, these are the words. And I feel you, like you read them back and you're like, wow, where did that come from? Because they aren't your words, they're not, it's not your message, especially when you really step out of the ego voice that wants to come through, and you allow that spirit message to be truly channeled through you.
Now, that mantra that I was mentioning before that you had used on your podcast, I'm going to read it out because for those who want to really tap into this more, the mantra is, I release all fear and limiting beliefs around my intuition. I am ready to access my universal gifts. How and when do we say and use this mantra?
You can do this after writing a letter to yourself of what you believe your limiting gifts and fears are. So you could actually do it as a ritual and go and write down a letter to yourself of why you don't feel like you're connecting. And then as you burn the piece of paper, read that out loud, would be really powerful. If you're trying to connect for the first time or call your guides in for the first time, you could read that out loud. Yeah, you can, whenever you feel called, you could write it at the top of a piece of paper and then journal, like we've been talking, that channeled writing. Go and channel, write what comes off the back of it, and then really make sure you read it out loud. For many of us, we write so much in our journal. We write down all of our emotions and our feelings, but why I share these kind of invocations and mantras to speak out loud is because by speaking them out loud, we're actually doing the healing. We're actually getting to speak our truth. We're actually getting to use the energetic frequencies of our voice to really transmute it in a different, in a new way, in a different way that is part of breaking the block.
And saying it in the mirror can be quite useful too, can't it?
Yeah, I love saying it in front of the mirror. Yeah, you can even with some of the mantras, write them on a piece of paper and stick them to a mirror so that you're looking at them every day when you're getting ready to go out and about, which I know is very difficult right now.
I was about to say, I haven't been out and about for a while.
I was about to say, getting ready for a home and recording podcast interviews.
That actually brings me to a question that I wanted to raise. Before COVID hit and before this pandemic came into our lives, did you get any messages or feelings or sensations that 2020 was going to be a year of such change and such a shift globally and collectively?
In my podcast all of last year, I was talking about 2020 and that we were being prepared for the thing that was coming down. In January, I channeled in the 2020 energy forecast that we would experience a global health crisis. And that was back at the start of January.
Wow.
The theme for 2020 is self-sovereignty. It is about the choice that we have and the freedom that we have, and that was going to be a big question over self-sovereignty and freedom and choice over what we put in our bodies, what we don't, and the relationship to the power structures and health. So I've been sharing since the middle of last year that seeing all the memes that yay 2020 vision, woo, it's like no, this is a big change. And I compare it to 2012 was like a spiritual reactivation for the individual. 2020 is the start of the spiritual reactivation of the collective, and we're being prepared for more to come. Like, I know everyone wants us to, inverted commas, I know everyone's sick of the phrase like, but get back to normal, but we are being prepared. There is more to come globally over the next couple of years, and I don't say that of fear or doom and gloom, but this is why these spiritual practices and our intuition is really important, because stepping into your own intuitive power right now to ground you, to get the guidance, to practice discernment, to discover what your truth is within all of this is going to be so paramount.
That's a lot to take in, isn't it? And it just makes me think back to another psychic I had on this show, Debbie Malone, who mentioned probably at the end of 2019 that 2020, she had the same feelings around 2020, and I cut it from the episode because it was right at the end, and really it felt doom and gloom, and I just felt as though I wasn't ready to share that with the world, because I was feeling so positive and ready for such an amazing year. I just turned 40. I had all these new dreams and goals that I was going out to achieve. I had booked travel for months and months and months. And I was like, I don't want to hear that right now. I'm not even sharing it. That's how much I don't want to hear it. But there you go. You felt it as well, and it's here, and we're not out of it yet.
No, and it's really important to still see the transformational elements that are still part of all of this, and still seeing like, what impact can I make in my life? How can I transform during this? It can be really, we can go down that energetic spiral. And hey, it's important to look at our shadows and look at our fears and worries and anxieties and not discredit them, because it's imperative. We are, a lot is coming up for us, and it's important that we sit with them and not just feel like, oh, I should be happy right now, or oh, I'm being told to focus on these, to focus on transformation and love and light. It is important to acknowledge what's happening, but also not to lose sight on the transformation that is happening, and that we can still grow and evolve in our own in our own individual lives right now is really important. Otherwise, I think it is about hope, and that might sound cheesy to people, but having that hope and knowing that you can still make transformation in your own life is key.
Great words. I know people are going to want to know more. So tell me about your upcoming book that is due to be released very soon.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Me too.
It's called You Are Intuitive, Trust Your Truth, Take Back Your Power. And it is a book all about how to connect to your intuition, what your blocks are, how to connect to your gifts, how to work with your intuition to heal the present moment. It talks about conscious intuition and what it means to be a conscious intuitive on this planet right now. It's completely channeled. There are sections talking about why we need our intuition now in the collective for this moment. I decided to self-publish this book based on an intuitive hit that I got when my guides are like, this book needs to come out in 2020 now. If you go through a traditional publisher, it won't be till the back end of 2021, 2022, and it's too late. This needs to come out like now. So yeah, it's an amazing guide to connect to your intuition. Every chapter comes with a binaural beats guided meditation, so it brings the practices of each chapter to life through the meditation. There are tools, there are practices. Honestly, there is so much information and knowledge in this book, and tools and tips, that I have to kind of go back through the chapters to remind myself what I wrote, because it's really detailed on so many levels.
I can't wait to dig into this book and really take back my own power. And I think let the fear go and tap into what is next.
Yeah, it's really important. And the book is all about, how you can tap into your truth and how you can be in your own energy and how you can receive your own messages. And every chapter of the book was mirrored back to me of what was happening in the collective. Every chapter. I was like, it was wild of all the themes that were showing up. So, the chapter all about trusting your intuition, and is it fear, or, is it a warning, was coming through at the start of the, in March, at the start of COVID, and everyone being, in that fear energy. It's been a powerful intuitive writing process, and I've loved it.
I'll put the link to the book in the show notes, but let us know where we can get it for anyone listening now who'd love to know.
Yeah, you can find out all the information at youareintuitive.com. And find out all the areas, all the places to buy the book. And I'm also, at the same time, because I got this also massive intuitive hit, I am creating an intuitive community. So if you're an intuitive that wants to connect with more intuitives and discover more about your intuition, there's a whole brand new community that's coming alongside the book as well.
And what platform is that on?
If you go to youareintuitive.com, all the information is there as well. Perfect. So it's all in one place.
Thank you so much for today. I'm going to give you the opportunity to perhaps say anything else that you want to leave us with.
Great question. I was like just tuning into spirit. I was like, what do you want to say? I was like, what really wants to be channeled through? I've mentioned the word hope, but it really feels like really tapping into the energy of hope, and hope for the collective, and hope for our communities, and really understanding the power of our voices, and how the voice is going to become a really important tool, and that there is a lot of fear around speaking up and speaking out, and it's going to be really important during this time to express your truths. It feels really important, and listening to your own intuition of the news you're consuming and what feels right for you, and creating that energetic self-sovereignty so that you can really be in your own energetic power is so important.
I'm Maritza Barone. Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.